He wasn't supposed to survive. Not in that blizzard. Not with a shattered leg. Not after being left by poachers to die alone in the Montana woods. But when Boomer, a weathered old shepherd dog, laid beside the wounded Mustang and licked his wounds like a brother, something changed. This wasn't instinct. It wasn't training. It was something wilder, something deeper. A bond so unnatural, it became sacred. They said a horse could never think it was a dog. But Dusty didn't just think it. He believed it. And what he did next, it rewrote everything we thought we knew about family. Before we begin, tell us where you are watching from. And if this story touches your heart, please subscribe for more. Missoula, Montana. Late afternoon, midwinter, as a snowstorm closes in from the Bitterroot Range. The snow had started falling in soft, uncertain flakes by the time Sam Whitaker pulled the canvas collar of his field coat tighter around his neck. He was a tall man with a frame shaped by years of hiking mountain trails and hauling timber samples through dense forests. His face bore a permanent 5 o'clock shadow, more from habit than style, and his brown eyes, shaded beneath the brim of a worn trapper's hat, carried the kind of quiet calculation common in people who studied nature not just for a living, but to understand something deeper about themselves. Sam was a forestry engineer, trained to observe, to measure, to stay uninvolved. But today, something felt different. Beside him, trudging through knee-deep snow in neon pink boots, was his 11-year-old daughter, Callie Whitaker. Petite and stubborn, Callie had inherited her mother's curly blonde hair and her father's unshakable gaze. Though young, she already walked like someone who had made her own decisions for years. Ever since the accident that took her older brother 2 winters ago, something in Callie had changed. She didn't laugh as loudly. She didn't talk as much. But she watched everything, everyone, with the keenness of a hawk. Bounding ahead in the powdery drifts were their 2 dogs, Boomer and Tuck, both German shepherds, though as different in spirit as snow and fire. Boomer, the elder of the 2, moved with the slow dignity of age. His graying muzzle and cloudy left eye betrayed his 12 winters, but his ears remained sharp, twitching at every unseen movement in the trees. Loyal, deliberate, and serious, Boomer had been Sam's companion since before Callie was born, and in many ways, the dog had helped raise her. Tuck, in contrast, was still in the blazing years of youth. Only 3 years old, he had the lean muscles and reckless energy of a creature who hadn't yet learned the weight of consequence. He zigzagged through the snowbanks with joyful abandon, his black and tan coat streaked with flakes, barking at snowflakes as if each were a threat to the household. They were heading home from an inspection near Flathead National Forest, a detour Sam had taken against his better judgment. The sky was already fading from pearl to gray, and the wind had begun to moan low through the pines. Sam glanced at his GPS watch. 3 miles to home, but the storm was coming in fast. Boomer stopped. It wasn't sudden, but it was deliberate, like the pause of a judge considering a verdict. His tail went stiff. His head turned slightly to the left, nose flaring, ears pointed toward a small ravine that broke off from the trail. Sam knew that stance. Tuck trotted up beside his elder, confused, then mirrored Boomer's posture. Sam slowed, placing a hand gently on Callie's shoulder. "Wait here," he said. But Callie didn't listen. She darted ahead, already pointing. "Dad, there! Something's down there!" The ravine was shallow but choked with snow and broken branches. At its center, beneath a thin layer of wind-blown snow, lay a figure. Sam climbed down, heart thudding in his chest. As he approached, the shape became clear. A Mustang foal, no older than a few months. Its coat, once likely a rich copper, was mottled with dried blood, ice, and dirt. One leg was twisted awkwardly beneath it. The animal was trembling violently, its breath a series of soft huffs, visible against the cold. Sam crouched beside it, brushing snow from the foal's flank. The creature flinched but didn't resist. Sam's gloved hand came away sticky with blood. "Damn it," he murmured. Callie slid beside him. "Is it alive?" "Barely," Sam said. He looked around. The snow nearby was disturbed. There were human boot prints, the unmistakable shape of a lasso cord, and several deep impressions like something had been dragged away. Blood was smeared in the snow in long broken lines. A single shotgun shell glittered dully beneath a nearby pine. Poachers. They had likely killed the mare and left the foal behind. Maybe it had broken its leg trying to escape. Maybe they just didn't care. Sam's stomach clenched. His training screamed at him, "Don't interfere. Let nature take its course. Let the system handle it." But the system wasn't here. The system didn't see the way Boomer, gentle, methodical Boomer, was slowly approaching the Mustang, lowering his head, sniffing gently. Then Boomer did something unexpected. He licked the foal's ear. The Mustang jerked, frightened, but then stilled. Boomer licked again, slow, deliberate, then lay down beside the shivering creature, as if guarding it. Sam's resolve cracked. Callie looked up, voice trembling. "We can't leave him, Dad. He'll die out here." Sam sighed, long and low. "Your mom's gonna kill me," he muttered. Carefully, he removed his backpack and rolled out the emergency thermal blanket. It took the better part of 20 minutes to lift the foal into a makeshift sling, secure its injured leg, and distribute the weight between himself and Callie, who refused to be left out. Boomer trotted beside the Mustang the whole way, his eyes alert, his body tense. The snow thickened as they moved, erasing the path behind them. Missoula faded into a soft white glow in the far distance. Sam knew the storm would swallow the trail soon. But something about the Mustang's faint heartbeat, the way Boomer refused to leave its side, the fierce look in Callie's eyes, made him keep walking. By the time they saw the lights of home blinking through the trees, darkness had fully settled. The Mustang hadn't made a sound. Sam could only hope that meant it was sleeping and not slipping away. By morning, the snowstorm had buried half of Missoula. Roads were silent. The pine trees bent low with white weight, and the wind groaned like an old wooden door. Inside the Whitaker home, the heat from the cast-iron stove pulsed warmly across wooden floors. Yet the living room was filled with tension, thick as the cold outside. Marla Whitaker stood at the base of the stairs, arms folded, her sharp green eyes fixed on the quilt-draped bundle lying near the mudroom. Tall and slender, with prematurely silver-streaked chestnut hair tied in a braid, Marla carried herself like someone used to being in control of life and death, but also someone deeply tired of having to. A veterinarian for over 20 years, she had seen both miracles and cruelty, and somewhere along the line, she'd stopped trusting emotion as a guide. After the loss of her son, she buried most of her softness under layers of efficiency and firm rules. But this morning, those rules were unraveling. "What is that?" she asked, though she already knew. Her voice was flat, but her fingers twitched at her sides. Sam set down the snow-covered gear by the fireplace, avoiding her eyes. "Mustang foal. Found him near the old ravine, injured, probably abandoned by poachers." Marla walked over, crouching beside the bundle. As she pulled back the quilt, her breath caught, not from surprise, but from heartbreak. The young horse was filthy, its fur matted with blood and grit. The right hind leg was swollen, likely fractured. Its coat, beneath the dirt, was a pale ash gray, almost blue under the lamplight. "You carried this thing 3 miles through a blizzard?" she murmured, brushing frost from its muzzle. "Callie helped," Sam said. At that, Marla looked up sharply. "You brought her with you?" she insisted. Marla exhaled through her nose. Of course she did. From the hallway, Callie emerged wrapped in a plaid blanket, Boomer padding silently at her heels. Her cheeks were flushed, her eyes half hoping for forgiveness, half defiant. "He was going to die, Mom. Boomer found him. He helped him." Marla's gaze flicked to Boomer, who sat like a sentinel next to the foal, his nose resting just inches from its flank. The old shepherd looked tired, but calm, his body positioned protectively as though this were just another member of the household. "I should be furious," Marla muttered. "And I will be, later." She stood and rolled up her sleeves. "Get the first aid kit. We're not letting him die now." The barn, insulated with hay and rigged with space heaters during winter months, was quickly turned into a makeshift treatment center. Marla worked with cool precision, setting the foal's leg with a splint, flushing wounds, administering antibiotics, and hand-feeding the dehydrated animal through a rubber syringe. She never spoke as she worked, her focus total, but Sam noticed the way her fingers softened when she brushed the foal's ears. That evening, the family gathered in the barn, listening to the wind howl outside while the foal lay nestled in fresh straw. Boomer lay at its side again, while Tuck watched curiously from a few feet away, tail thumping on the boards. Callie sat cross-legged nearby. "He needs a name. He might not make it," Marla said quietly. "Then he needs one even more." The foal stirred slightly, letting out a faint, snuffling whinny. Dusty, Callie whispered, because of his color, and because he's been through so much dirt to get here. Marla didn't object. Sam nodded once. Dusty it is. The storm didn't let up for 3 more days. Roads were buried under 4 feet of snow, phone lines downed, and the radio reported landslides up in Flathead. The Whitaker home became a warm island in a sea of white, a cocoon of waiting. In that quiet stretch of time, something strange began to unfold. Dusty, still too weak to stand, began responding to the dog's presence in unusual ways. He watched them with wide, intelligent eyes, observing their movements, reactions, and vocalizations. Boomer remained by his side almost constantly, while Tuck grew bolder, darting in to nudge Dusty's ears and playfully nip at his tail. On the 3rd day, when Marla opened the barn door, she found Dusty standing for the first time, shaky, but upright. Boomer rose with him. The foal took 2 steps, then looked to the old shepherd and mimicked his movements almost exactly. Later that afternoon, Dusty responded when Callie called for Tuck. He didn't just turn, he took several slow steps toward her, head tilted. When she knelt and clapped her hands, both dogs ran to her, and Dusty followed, almost like it was instinct. That night, while Sam chopped firewood, Callie filmed a short video. It showed Dusty hobbling across the barn after Boomer, then lying beside Tuck, letting the dog lick his nose. She uploaded it to her private account with a simple caption, "Our rescued Mustang thinks he's a dog. Meet Dusty." She didn't expect anyone to watch, but by morning, the video had over 10,000 views. Marla started keeping a leather-bound journal again, something she hadn't touched in years. Her neat, slanted handwriting filled pages, feeding times, behavior logs, reactions to stimuli. But the tone was different from her clinical reports. It was curious, even hopeful. There were entries like, observed Dusty attempting to bark, more of a breathy wheeze, but followed Tuck's vocalization pattern. Or, Dusty nosed ball toward Boomer after watching Tuck play fetch, maybe attempting mimicry. In the evenings, she'd sometimes find herself staring at Dusty and thinking not about biology, but about grief. How the body, animal or human, finds strange ways to cope with loneliness. One evening, after brushing Dusty's mane while he leaned sleepily against her shoulder, she whispered, "You really don't know what you are, do you?" Dusty blinked and nuzzled her gently. By the end of the week, Dusty was walking without pain. His coat had been brushed clean, revealing not just the dusty gray, but patches of brighter silver beneath, like smoke caught in sunlight. His eyes were amber, rimmed with lashes so long they cast little shadows on his cheeks. Callie often lay beside him on the straw with a book in hand, reading aloud as Boomer kept watch. Dusty began waiting at the barn door when Sam opened it each morning, often trotting beside him like Boomer did. Once, Marla found him inside the mudroom, standing with quiet dignity beside the coat rack, waiting for breakfast like a dog expecting kibble. That night, as the family sat around the fire, Callie looked at her parents. "Do you think he knows he's not a dog?" Sam smirked. "I think he knows he's loved. That might be enough." Marla didn't answer. She stared at the flickering flames, her hands folded in her lap. But later that night, she added a line to her journal. Subject displays complex social mimicry, emotional dependency, and species confusion. Also, subject may have begun to heal more than just his own heart. The thaw came slowly to Missoula. Icicles melted drip by drip from the gutters. The packed snow on the barn's roof slid off in wide sheets with heavy sighs, and the pine trees stretched skyward again, unburdened. The sky turned a deep western blue, and the first promise of spring crept across the hills like a secret. With the sun came the buzz of connectivity. Electricity returned to the neighborhood, phone lines crackled back to life, and so did the internet. That's when everything changed. Callie's short clip of Dusty, hobbling after Boomer and trying to bark, had gained traction during the blackout, slowly shared among animal lovers, homeschool parents, and online forums. But once the world came back online, it exploded. By the end of the second day, it had amassed over 3 million views. National websites ran headlines like, "Mustang raised by dogs thinks he's one too," and "Dog-horse bond melts hearts across America." Callie stared at the rising numbers with awe, while Marla flipped through pages of her observation journal, her brows furrowed, not in irritation, but concern. "We didn't ask for this kind of attention," she murmured to Sam one morning as they drank coffee by the wood stove. and attention always comes with eyes that look too closely. It wasn't paranoia, it was prophecy. 2 days later, a white government SUV rolled up the long gravel drive. A man in a deep green parka stepped out, brushing road dust from his jacket. He was tall, with sun-darkened skin, lean but not wiry, and had short cropped hair going gray at the temples. His boots were polished, his clipboard tucked beneath one arm, and his eyes, pale blue and slightly sad, swept the property like a man who'd spent his career looking at things before taking them away. This was Liam Rhodes, Senior Inspector for the Montana Department of Wildlife and Natural Resources. At 51, he was known for fairness and restraint, but also for unwavering professionalism. He didn't let feelings blur the law. Or at least, that's what he told himself. Sam met him halfway down the porch steps. "Inspector Rhodes?" "Mr. Whitaker." Liam extended a gloved hand. His grip was firm. "We've received a number of reports about an unregistered wild animal being kept as a domestic pet." Sam didn't answer. Instead, he gestured toward the barn. Liam followed, his boots crunching frost on the path. Inside the barn, the air was warm and thick with hay. Dusty lay curled on a bed of straw, Boomer beside him. When the inspector entered, the young Mustang lifted his head, ears perked. Liam's expression changed. He stopped in his tracks, observing the pair. Dusty stood slowly and trotted toward him, stopping just short of his boots. The horse's tail flicked once, and then he did something that made the inspector blink. He sat down, clumsily but purposefully, mirroring Boomer, who was now wagging his tail. Collie, seated near the back of the stall with Tuck in her lap, said softly, "He does that when he wants to be introduced." Liam glanced at her, then back at the horse. "I've seen a lot of wild animals," he said slowly, "but I've never seen one do that." Marla stepped forward, her vet coat smudged with straw. "He's not just another wild animal. He's been psychologically bonded to our dogs. He mimics them, responds to human speech. He behaves like a pack member." Liam scribbled something on his clipboard. "Doesn't change the legal definition. He's an unpermitted wild animal." Sam's jaw clenched. "We didn't plan this. We saved his life." "I believe you." Liam's voice softened. "But intent isn't what the law measures." Dusty let out a low, half-snort, half-chuff sound and nudged Liam's hand with his muzzle. The inspector stiffened, but didn't pull away. Instead, he ran a hand slowly down Dusty's head and neck. "Still. This is extraordinary." Later that afternoon, Liam sat on the porch with Marla and Sam, sipping coffee from a mug Callie had painted years ago. He looked over the frozen fields that had started to reveal patches of brown earth. "He's healthy, well-fed, not aggressive, but the law says any wild animal, especially a Mustang, which falls under federal jurisdiction, must be either adopted through official channels or returned to a registered sanctuary." Marla folded her arms. "What if he doesn't survive there? What if this environment, this home, is the only reason he's still alive?" "I can request an evaluation from the Bureau," Liam replied. "But I'll be honest, it won't matter. He's not registered. And we've got eyes on this case now, especially with the media storm." That night, Liam filed the official report. 2 days later, a transport vehicle arrived. It was large, government-marked, and ominously quiet. Dusty didn't resist. Perhaps he sensed the tension. Boomer barked once, loud and sharp. Tuck whined at the back door, his nails scratching at the frame. Callie sobbed quietly into Marla's coat. Marla, pale-faced but composed, whispered soft reassurances she didn't fully believe. Sam stood by the gate as Dusty was loaded. The young Mustang paused before entering the ramp, turning once toward the barn. Boomer barked again, this time longer, and Dusty let out a high-pitched, mournful nicker that seemed to echo off the barn walls. As the gate closed, Dusty turned and pressed his nose to the bars. That night, the house was silent. Even the dogs refused to eat. Boomer lay by the barn door. Tuck sat on the porch steps, his eyes fixed on the gravel road. And in her bedroom, Callie wrote something on a small piece of paper and pinned it to the wall. "He will come back, because we're his pack." The Helena Wildlife Sanctuary was nestled in a vast basin rimmed by pine-laced slopes and craggy peaks that scraped at the sky like stone teeth. Snow still lingered in the shadows of the trees, but spring was beginning to press her fingers into the soil, coaxing buds to life and awakening the silence with birdsong. The sanctuary was wild, yes, but it was watched. Cameras perched on posts. Rangers moved in shifts. The land was meant to simulate wilderness, but its boundaries were still defined by fences, rules, and human oversight. Dusty was released at the southern edge, near a shallow ridge thick with furs and streams that wove through the brush like silver threads. The tracker on his collar blinked with green light, monitored by the sanctuary's control room. At first, Dusty stayed close to the release site. He didn't panic, didn't bolt like many Mustangs did. He moved cautiously, his hooves slow and deliberate on the damp earth. He sniffed the wind, touched his nose to the bark of trees. But he did not join the nearby herd the rangers had hoped he'd approach. Instead, he circled, always returning to the same pine with a crooked trunk, as though anchoring himself to a landmark only he understood. Two new characters entered the story at the sanctuary. The first was Ranger Eliza DuPont, a sturdy woman in her early 40s with olive skin, short black curls under her ranger cap, and a calm, no-nonsense demeanor. Raised in Oregon, Eliza had worked with wild horses for over a decade. She believed in tough love. Animals should adapt or be left behind. But when she saw Dusty gently nuzzle a squirrel instead of chasing it, she paused. "He's different," she murmured to her colleague one morning. "He's not afraid of the wild, but he's not part of it either." That colleague was Gabriel Knox, a younger ranger, barely 30, lean and restless, with a quick mouth and soft heart. Gabriel had grown up on a cattle ranch and joined the sanctuary team after burning out of city life. He often said horses calmed him in a way people never could. And Dusty fascinated him. "He watches the tree line every night," Gabriel said, squatting beside Eliza with a pair of binoculars. "Always facing west. That's not random." Eliza frowned. "What's west?" "Missoula," Gabriel answered, then blinked. "You think?" "No," Eliza interrupted. "That's not how animal minds work. He's adjusting. He'll settle." But he didn't. By the fourth day, Dusty had begun moving, always westward. Not in a frantic sprint, but with measured purpose. He navigated the woods like he'd studied the terrain. He avoided the herd entirely and ignored food left by rangers. Instead, he found small springs and browsed on shoots and mosses, as if relying on something older than memory. The tracker recorded his path, and the sanctuary team watched, curious. Then, on the sixth day, he slipped through a broken stretch of fencing during a thunderstorm. He didn't spook at the lightning. He waited until the patrol changed shifts. Then he moved, deliberate, steady, like a creature with an internal map no one could see. Back in Missoula, the Whitaker family sat in silence most evenings. Sam worked late outside. Marla continued her journal, but her hands trembled as she wrote. Callie stopped filming, stopped posting. She only stared at the GPS app on her phone, watching the blinking dot that marked Dusty's movements. It moved west. "He's coming back," Callie whispered one night, barely audible over the fireplace. "I know it." But on the ninth day, just as the dot approached the edge of a known predator zone, marked for lynx and coyotes, it began to behave erratically. Sharp zigs, sudden halts, then silence. The tracker died. Callie dropped the phone. Marla stood and walked straight outside. Sam followed, wordless. That night, the dogs howled. Boomer's old voice rose in a song of sorrow, joined by Tuck's trembling whimpers. Callie didn't cry. She just taped a new note over her old one. "He's still trying." Miles away, in the dense folds of the Sapphire Mountains, Dusty limped through underbrush. His left flank bore deep scratches, fang marks from a late-night ambush by a small predator, likely a coyote pack. One had latched onto his shoulder. Dusty had kicked it free and trampled another, but not before his collar snagged on a branch and ripped free. Wounded but upright, Dusty moved. He crossed a river swollen with meltwater, bracing his legs and letting the current slam into his side as he powered through. He rested in old bear dens, avoided traps, sidestepped highways, and turned around settlements. His instincts didn't tell him to dominate. They told him to survive. Each night he stopped at high ridges facing west, watching the horizon, his breath rising in clouds. Once, he found a child's toy near a campsite, a rubber dog bone. He sniffed it, picked it up in his teeth, and carried it for miles. When Dusty crossed into the Bitterroot Valley, no one saw him. But one night, a man driving a truck saw what he described as a ghost gray horse standing at the edge of the trees. The next morning, his story was dismissed as exhaustion. But not by everyone. Gabriel Knox, unable to forget Dusty, had been tracking unofficial sightings. When he saw the old trucker's report online, he reached out. Then he did something reckless. He called the Whitakers. "I can't do this officially," he said, voice shaky, "but if he's alive, he's heading your way." Marla hung up without saying a word, but she turned to Sam. "Get the barn ready." By the 12th day, Dusty was only 30 miles from home. His limp had faded. His coat was filthy, streaked with old blood and dust, but his eyes were clear, and his pace never faltered. When he finally saw the silhouette of the red barn, he paused. The wind shifted. He caught the scent of straw, of pine, of Boomer, and he ran. The rain had come without warning, slicking the windows in diagonal streaks, tapping softly against the tin roof of the Whitaker house. Inside, the scent of garlic and rosemary drifted from the kitchen where Sam was carving roast chicken, his knife slow, movements distant. Across the table, Marla sat with her journal closed for once, fingers interlaced, eyes drifting between the storm and Callie, who picked silently at her mashed potatoes. The dining room had taken on a quiet stillness, the kind that settles when hope has nearly run out but hasn't quite died. Then suddenly, Boomer lifted his head. It wasn't a bark. It wasn't even a growl. It was something ancient, a sound made from bone-deep memory, a low, vibrating hum that made Marla rise from her chair before she even realized it. Tuck joined, more frantic, scraping at the door with a sense of panic that cracked the quiet wide open. Sam dropped the knife. Callie bolted from her seat, and then the door opened. In the downpour, framed by the golden light of the porch lamp and the silver shimmer of rain, stood a figure that didn't belong in any story but their own. Dusty. His coat was drenched and matted with mud. Scabs lined his side where the scars had not yet healed, and his right foreleg was slightly favoring the ground, but he stood upright, taller, leaner, wilder, yet unmistakably him. His eyes were the same, amber with a rim of deep brown, wide and searching. Boomer bounded forward first, barking with a voice that cracked with age but not with spirit. Tuck followed, crashing into Dusty's side with a joyful yelp. The Mustang stood still for a heartbeat, then dipped his head and let out a soft, whickering nicker, followed by something stranger. A noise low and breathy, not quite a neigh, not quite a bark. Callie stepped into the light, barefoot in the rain, hair clinging to her face. She ran to Dusty, wrapping her arms around his neck. He leaned into her like he remembered every touch. Sam and Marla joined in silence, too stunned for anything but presence. Later that night, after they had toweled him down and fed him warm oats laced with apples, they all sat in the barn, not speaking. Boomer and Tuck curled on either side of him. Callie fell asleep against Dusty's shoulder, and the Mustang rested his chin atop her head. By morning, the house phone rang. Inspector Liam Rhodes arrived before noon. The rain had cleared, but the fields were soft with fog and the barn was warm with breath and hay. Liam stepped inside, not as a threat this time, but as someone haunted by something he couldn't quite explain. He had barely slept since Gabriel's call about the sightings. Seeing Dusty now, alive, returned, fully settled between two dogs as if he had never left him speechless. Liam scratched his jaw, glanced at Sam. "I should be writing citations." Sam didn't reply. Marla approached with a manila folder, medical records, journal entries, GPS logs, and printed screenshots of the viral video data. "You won't find another case like this," she said, calm but certain. Liam sighed, flipping through the pages. Then Dusty walked toward him, not with caution but with familiarity. The Mustang lowered his head and gently nudged Liam's coat pocket. The inspector smiled in spite of himself. "That's where I kept the peppermints," he muttered. Dusty made the low, barking noise again. Liam looked down, shook his head, and said, "That's not science, that's loyalty." Then, glancing at the family, he added, "I'll recommend supervised sanctuary status, on-site containment, permanent behavioral study." "Meaning?" Sam asked. "Meaning he stays, under observation, as long as you're willing to help the state understand what this is." Callie, standing by the stall gate, whispered, "It's not science, it's family." Liam didn't argue. A year passed. The Whitaker property expanded to include a fully outfitted shelter, built with funding from the Montana Zoological Initiative, which had taken an interest in Dusty's case. The barn was retrofitted with climate controls and viewing platforms for scheduled research visits. Fencing was reinforced, not to trap Dusty in, but to protect him from outside interference. Researchers came, some skeptical, some fascinated. They brought charts and infrared cameras, took blood samples, collected behavioral footage. Most left scratching their heads, unsure how to define what they had witnessed. Some called it an anomaly. Others called it emotional imprinting. One simply wrote in her notebook, "This Mustang doesn't want to be wild. He wants to belong." Dusty, now fully grown and magnificent, stood nearly 15 hands high. His gray coat had deepened to storm silver, and a bold white stripe ran from his forehead to his nose. His legs were long and powerful, his frame balanced and elegant. But it wasn't his beauty that drew attention. It was his behavior. He responded to his name. He came when called. He followed Boomer and Tuck on morning patrols and helped herd the chickens, without once harming a single one. When the school bus stopped at the end of the road each afternoon, he waited with the dogs for Callie's return. And each evening, just before sunset, he climbed the grassy hill behind the house with Boomer on one side, Tuck on the other, and lay down to watch the sun dip behind the Bitterroot Mountains. There was one more character who arrived that spring, Sarah Kinsley, a documentary filmmaker from Colorado, sent by a wildlife media agency. Sarah was in her early 30s, medium height, sharp features softened by round glasses, and a voice that asked gentle questions with surprising depth. She had grown up with horses but had never seen one like Dusty. She spent 3 weeks filming, interviewing the family, studying the bond. She asked Callie, "Do you think Dusty knows he's not a dog?" Callie thought for a long moment and said, "I think he knows he's different, but not wrong." Sarah's film would go on to win 3 international awards. But none of that mattered to Dusty. What mattered was the sound of Boomer's bark, the feel of Tuck's shoulder bumping against his flank, the smell of hay and oats and home, and the familiar weight of Callie's hand brushing through his mane as they sat beneath a Montana sky that stretched forever. In the end, Dusty wasn't just a wild horse. He was a reminder that family isn't always about blood. Sometimes it's about the ones who see you, choose you, and walk beside you, no matter how different you are. In our daily lives, we often feel like we don't quite belong, like we have to act a certain way to be accepted. But maybe, just maybe, being different is what makes us part of something special. If Dusty taught us anything, it's that love can shape us more deeply than instinct. And that home is not a place, it's the feeling of being known and loved for who we are. If this story moved you, take a moment to share it with someone who might need that reminder today. Leave a comment to tell us what part touched your heart. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that prove love doesn't follow the rules. Thank you for being here.